Public Library of Science stated, within 12 hours after fertilization, the packets of DNA from the male and female have approached, merged, and the intermingling chromosomes pair and part. As the first meiotic division occurs, new human genome forms. So DNA is formed and the cells are rapidly multiplying within the first 12 hours of fertilization, which is pretty crazy. If you don't recall my informative speech on fetal development, here are some key points. One, the heart beats at 18 days. Usually women find out that they're pregnant at around 4 to 7 weeks, which means in almost all cases, the baby's heart is actually beating when the woman finds out that she's pregnant. Abortion wasn't always accepted like it is today. It wasn't always a choice. In 1967, it was actually a felony in 49 states. In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court made it legalized through the Roe versus Wade case, and that really changed a lot of things. In my audience analysis, it was right in the half for girls, as they were pro-life or pro-choice. All the boys were pro-choice except for 2, which I found very interesting. I believe that a fetus is a living person from the point of conception. I think the laws of viability are controversial, and I think that the emotional and psychological effects that a woman has are lasting throughout her life. So let's jump into the science of it. Many pro-choice supporters don't acknowledge that a fetus is a living human being. Like I said, 12 hours after fertilization, new human genome is formed. A genome is a complete set of genes in a cell. So at this point, that is hair color, eye color, height, the nature of their personality. This is all already there at that point. Some women even will say that a fetus is a parasite or a lump of cells in their body. And I don't know if this is a coping mechanism or a form of justification, but the science really says otherwise. So let's move into the topic of viability. When asked, when is a fetus become a living human being, a lot of people will say when they are viable to live outside of the womb, which they say is around 22 to 24 weeks, but there's no definitive time as to when this is. In California, it's 22 to 24 weeks, and just 2 short weeks after that, 26 to 27 weeks, babies are 90% to survive outside of the womb. And in 8 states, it's actually fully legal to have a full-term abortion when your baby is 9 months and completely fully formed, which is pretty crazy. And a lot of women will say, it's my body, so it's my choice. But it's interesting because, like I said, this baby has their own unique DNA, and they even have their own blood. A mother and a baby do not share blood whatsoever. The baby can have a completely different blood type than the mother, which is really interesting. And I think that that would define this fetus to be their own individual human being. Lastly, I would like to talk about the emotional and psychological effects that women experience after having an abortion. A lot of women think that terminating an unplanned pregnancy will lead to relief, and it will relieve some of the stress, but it actually does quite the opposite. There was a meta-analysis done. It was 22 studies altogether. There was 877,000 women that were in this study. That is a lot of people. And of that, 164,000 women had had abortions. And 81% of them experienced mental health illnesses after this. 110% were more likely to abuse alcohol, 155% were more likely to have suicidal tendencies, and 220 were more likely to abuse other substances. There was also another study done in California where there was 56,000 women, and these women were 160% more likely than women who deliver babies to be actually put into psychiatric hospitals, not even just seeing a psychiatrist, but actually having to go into the hospital for 90 days after having that abortion and up to 4 years after that. I think we all know that sex can lead to the reproduction of life. I do think that women have a choice, but I think that we also have the choice to take precautions if you're living a sexually active life. Males and females, we all know what kind of precautions we can take. Women can take birth control, men can use condoms, and we can eliminate having to make this choice at all if we're just responsible and smart in the first place. Also, I think parenting and adoption should be considered when an unplanned pregnancy happens. In conclusion, I think that pregnancy could change your life for the better. You really never know until it actually happens. And to reiterate my points, a baby is alive from conception. Yes, they're inside the womb and they're dependent on the mother, but they have their own individual DNA and their own individual beating heart and circulatory system. Ultimately, I don't know if it's the mother's choice to decide life or death for this child. It's an innocent life that shouldn't be taken over, selfish and irresponsible acts. And real quick, Norma McCorvey, she was actually the Roe in the Roe versus Wade case. She was the one who was fighting to have abortion legalized. And this was in 1973, and she actually came back in 1998 saying, "I'm 100% pro-life. I don't believe in abortion, even in an extreme case. If a woman is impregnated by a rapist, it's still a child. You are not to act as your own God," which is pretty powerful because this is the woman who got abortion legalized in the United States, and it ended up being such a burden for her in her later life. So if I can have an influence on one person in this class, that's amazing because your voice means a lot and you can literally save a life.